Good evening, all. I seem to have gone live a bit early, but hey, what the hell? Who cares? What a day. Hey, I was going to chat about the sentencing of Vikrum Digwa regarding the murder of Henry Nowak, which is pretty awful. Absolutely pretty awful. But there's a lot going on in Twitter, which is now a complete fucking cesspool full of shit and people just sounding their mouth off and not making any freaking sense whatsoever. So I thought I'd try and pull some stuff together and see if we can actually determine what the problem is and why people are so enraged. Because they are enraged. Again, not quite sure why, but well, yeah, I kind of do know why they're enraged. I do. And sorry if I'm rambling a bit. But there's a lot here that people seem to be picking up on that isn't necessarily true and isn't how we as British people normally sort things out. And I think people misunderstand the police. And no, I am not. I am by no means forgiving the actions of the police on this. People misunderstand they misunderstand and they don't realise that the police are actually protected because the police don't have a duty of care to you. Which just sounds completely mad because you think, there's a social contract. The police look after us if we need, the state has a monopoly on violence. If we need help in a situation where people are being violent to us, the police have a duty to defend us. And legally, that's not the case. Morally, yeah. And individually, many police officers will do that. Most police officers would do that in my day. So, full disclosure, I was a cop for 20 odd years, Strathclyde. I retired as a result of a skiing accident which damaged my shoulder, so I got out early, and that wasn't a bad thing for me personally. While a police officer, I'd been on the beat in rural policing. I'd been in the traffic in the urban area of Glasgow, and I'd been in firearms, crewing the fast response vehicle during the Gulf War, of all things, which was fun because we used to run about with H&Ks in the car and things like that. But since leaving, I've then worked in IT for 20 odd years, and as part of that, I ended up working for the police. I now Police Scotland and not Strathclyde anymore. So I've got a pretty good idea of what goes on in the police, both internally as a cop and then in senior levels, because when I was there, I was a senior project manager and I was dealing with chief superintendents and above. I even had a sergeant assigned to me. That's my lackey. Which was a bit of an eye-opener because he was a Muslim and he was studying for some kind of, what would you call it, test or whatever, or something at his mosque. And during lunch times, I was reading his book sometimes, and I'm thinking, this is nuts. This is what got me into reading the Quran and opening my eyes. Which then became a long process of really coming to terms with the fact that that religion in particular operates as a cult. And, that's just my opinion. But when you can't leave a religion without fear of violence being imposed on you, then that's not a religion, that's a cult. So, but let's get back to the task at hand, which is Henry Novak, who died under incredibly trying circumstances for someone to have been stabbed, to be bleeding internally, probably a collapsed lung or something. He's telling the police that turned up that he couldn't breathe. He tried to run away, he'd been stabbed in the back of his leg or whatever. So this guy wasn't in any condition to offer up any kind of resistance. And the police turned up, and obviously the people that could speak cogently were the accused and his family, who were there first, which that then leads you to the point where, yes, I believe his family were phoned before they phoned the police. And nobody's mentioned an ambulance getting phoned, so I would assume the police did that. So this guy's been stabbed 4 times or whatever, or more. And he's bleeding, and he's obviously in a distressed condition, and the police handcuff him. Which is a strange thing to be doing from someone who's in that kind of condition when you can't see a weapon. And I'm only speaking of previous experience and how things were in my day, which is a long time ago now. That was over 20 years ago. But I still wouldn't expect the police to be behaving like that. And to drag him across gravel and handcuff him and then laugh in his face, as the father has said, effectively. Telling him they didn't think he had been stabbed. And only really offering assistance once Henry had become unconscious, which is of no use. You know, I believe they attempted resuscitation at that point. That's a bit fucking late. I've been in situations where we've had to deal with people that have been injured, who've been assaulted, who've been assaulting people and got badly injured themselves. You know, guy was trying to get to his girlfriend, put his arm through a window, lacerated his arm to the point where he cut an artery. We were holding his arm up, putting pressure on it, and we were there with him for an hour. We didn't fucking handcuff him. He survived while we waited on the ambulance. And we had a whole conversation with the control about taking them to the hospital in the car, but it's one of these things. They're like, well, if you take him to the car and he dies in the car, then it's a death in police custody. If you're holding him there and the ambulance doesn't turn up in time, it's a death where we were assisting, but not assisting them to die. But we were told that the ambulance was 5 minutes away for about at least half an hour. But eventually the ambulance came and the paramedics were great once they got there and saved them. So, and I'll encourage any chat. I'm more than happy to answer your questions tonight. But there's a couple of things that people seem to think, oh, he's got off with it effectively. Well, he's not. He's been sentenced. He's been found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 21 years. And this sentence is important. You've got to understand, this isn't a sentence that gets chopped. You know, if you're a good boy, you get out in 5 or 10. No, you've been sentenced to murder, to prison for a minimum of 21 years. You've been sentenced to life. Now, I said on Friday I thought life started at 25. Hey, I might be wrong. But life is life. Life isn't a defined period of time. And in fact, let me just read exactly what the situation is for a life sentence in England and Wales. So when a judge hands down a life sentence with a 21-year recommendation, that 21 years represents the statutory minimum term, right? That's the minimum term. No reductions, okay? The offender must serve every single day of that 21-year period in prison. No getting out early. No open prisons. No wandering home for your tea. No. The statutory rules that allow other prisoners to be released at the 40, 50 or 2/3 mark, do not apply to the minimum term of a life sentence. The 21-year clock begins from the date the individual was first remanded in custody prior to trial, not the date of sentencing. Okay, so when he was first arrested, put to court for his pleading diet, and then sentenced to remand, or put in remand. The only legal provision for release before the 21-year mark is on compassionate grounds. One would expect something like a terminal illness with a life expectancy of weeks, and that needs authorization from government ministers. Serving 21 years does not automatically trigger release. It simply represents the point where he becomes eligible for parole. So once that term is concluded, the case is referred to the relevant parole board. The board will only direct release if they're satisfied that it is no longer necessary for the protection of the public that the offender remains confined. If the board determines the individual still poses a risk, they will remain in prison, with further reviews typically scheduled every 2 years. So he's not getting out in 10 years. He's not getting out in 9 years. He's not doing a third of his sentence. He's doing a minimum of 21 years. And given the fact that he took a young life of 18, I think that's a lenient sentence that he can then be considered for parole after 21. So, and remember, it's a life sentence, so it applies throughout his life. So even if the parole board allows him out before the end of his life, which is a courtesy, not a right, a courtesy. So if he's released, he will be released on a life license, meaning they are subject to strict supervision, monitoring, and specific behavioural conditions for the remainder of their natural life. He will always be effectively able to be recalled to prison at a moment's notice should he step out of line. It's a question. He's still alive. The other guy isn't, So that deals with the sentence. The father made a statement after the sentencing on the steps of the court, and he gave a very measured statement, I think. And he told us what had happened. And he's probably going to know more than we do, to be fair. And he told us about Henry telling the police he'd been stabbed, Henry saying he couldn't breathe. And I can understand that because his lungs would be filling with fluid. So people are now demanding on Twitter, but people are saying that the body cam footage should be released. Now, the police are being investigated. And as the father said, maybe at least one of these police officers has resigned. That doesn't take away the responsibility for your actions, You can't live with what you've done. Then yes, you should have resigned. You should have resigned. But, well, Shanti, that's always been the case. Real justice happens inside these days. That's always been the case. But as I was saying, the police are being investigated for their actions. They're being investigated by the Independent Police Commission, I believe. And That's not how we used to do things in the past. It used to be investigated by another police force, and there would be oversight by the police authority. My experience is mainly in Scotland, though, so, you know, I don't know if that's ever been the case in England. But don't ever think that the police are soft on other police. Because, you know, the police don't give the police a break. Or they certainly didn't when I was around. You know, it's not, you might get a break for something minor. But if you were caught doing a major crime, you know, you're not getting a break. If you get found drunk lying in the street, you might get a break. But you're not getting a break for anything beyond that. I can assure you. The police are hard on the police. Especially when it comes to investigating other police forces for wrongdoing. So, I'm not sure what the IOPC are like. I've never dealt with them. But I would imagine that they're, as a professional organisation, they will approach it professionally and they will investigate this properly. But this is where we go back to the police and their duty of care, because the police don't really have a duty of care to individuals. The police duty of care is to the state. The police work for the state in effect, and individual police might think they're there to protect people, but really they're not. You're really there to protect property and ensure society doesn't break down. And when you come to terms with that as a police officer, because a lot of police officers, myself included, didn't join the police with that in mind. You know, I didn't realise I was an agent of the state. I thought I was joining the police as a vocation to help people, you know, lock up bad guys. Bit of the Sweeney, you know, but it's not like that. It's not like that. And when I found out, the first time when I really found out was when I was sent out as like a 1 year probation. I'd been on a year or more. And I was sent out on my own on the night shift. And this is a big thing, you know, because normally probationers, you were stuck with well, we didn't call them partners or anything like that. We used to call the person that we worked with our neighbour. So you're always stuck with a senior cop as your neighbour who would, you know, show you the ropes and keep you right. And I get sent out on the beat on the night shift on my own. I remember the sergeant telling me to make sure that I checked all the property on my beat and didn't miss anything and no break-ins. And I'm thinking, he seems more concerned about the property than, you know, finding crime or finding people or helping people. And that is the case. The police are agents of the state and agents of the corporations. Because let's face it, it's the corporations that control the state these days, and has been for some time. The raw reality is real, is there. So the police are effectively protected in court from being prosecuted for not helping people. So courts are very, very reluctant to speak out against police officers or to speak against police officers that haven't done something by omission. So if you've driven by a road accident and were going to something that you deemed more important, but somebody died in the road accident, you don't get done for it. If you run someone down going to a call, a lot of times you might get done for the road traffic offences, but you won't get done for manslaughter or whatever. So the police are protected against actions against individuals, which isn't how one thinks about it, because you think, as I said at the beginning, that there's a social contract between the police and between the public. You know, the policing by consent and all that. And really, the policing by consent is just something that's nice to say, because it doesn't really happen anymore, does it? You know, the police are the sole owners of coercive violence, and they wield it. So in a situation where someone's been stabbed and needs assistance, and you have asked for an ambulance, if the ambulance doesn't get there, or, you know, people miss the call or something, or the ambulance breaks down, then the ambulance service has a duty of care once they've been summoned to someone. They have a duty of care and they can get pulled up for it. But the police don't. And this is, I think, where people don't understand the difference between the police and the other emergency services. The police are, you know, agents of the state. Unlike firemen and ambulance service and even Coast Guard to a degree, police are completely different. And the other services, the other emergency services, all have that duty of care that isn't really imposed on the police. Now, that doesn't mean that individual police officers won't try and help people. But it seems to me that in this day and age, that the police seem to be moving more and more away from that. They seem to be moving away from going out of their way to help people, to the point that they're now going out of their way to harm people. And are they being, what would you say, too wary when it comes to things like, you know, frightened to apply the law fairly? And, you know, that's quite interesting as well, because the English oath that police officers take talks about applying the law fairly and equally to one and all. But the Scottish oath doesn't. The Scottish oath just says you will discharge the duties of constable. Basically, that's that. I swear. They don't even swear to the Queen as it was then, or the King as it is now, but the English do. The Scottish oath is just that you affirm or swear by Almighty God that you will faithfully discharge the duties of constable, and that's it. That's it. So, are they brainwashed, or are they just reverting to type? Because I think there was a golden era for the police, and I think that era was the old Dixon of Dock Green image and whatever. Maybe up till the 80s, when we still had community constables. We still knew who we were dealing with. We were in post in towns or cities, or, you know, on beats for 2 or 3 years. So you got to know people. You got to know what was happening on the ground. You got to know the bad ones and the good ones, and you got to know the bad ones that you could rely on to help you out if you really needed it, because they were there. But I don't think that happens anymore. I think it's very much us and them. And that's a bad thing for society, in my view. So, a lot of people are asking for the body cam footage to be shown, and I'm wondering why. Why do you want to see the body cam footage? Is it some kind of voyeuristic thing? Because, you know, this family have gone through a lot. So why would you want the body cam footage to be public? Because a lot of it's going to be, you know, Henry. And I think I'm not sure what they actually want to achieve by releasing, by demanding the release of the body cam footage. What do you want to happen? Do you want people to be even more enraged? To get to the point where they maybe think that it's time to meet violence with violence, and I can't condone that at all. But, what is it you think releasing the body cam footage will achieve? It won't help the family. It won't help the investigation of the police officers. It might make a lot of the public very angry, with good reason, but do you really need any more anger? You know what's happened. You've been told what's happened. Why do you need to see video? Why do you need to hear people being horrible to each other? Being nasty and mean? Why do you need to hear that? That's what I'm saying. Who's this for? Is it for you? Or is it to rile people up to the point that, what? That we take it to the streets? Is that what you want? So, enlighten me. I don't know. I don't know what people want. I don't understand why releasing that footage would make any difference. Because we know what happened. We've been told what happened. We've been told in court what happened. So why would we need to see? And let's have a quick look at that cesspit known as Twitter, shall we? Let me go to the slides. Right, okay. What's happening? Right, so there's Shalini as always. Good on you, Shalini. Right in there. So I asked the question as to why they wanted it released, and someone said if we could trust the corrupt authorities, we wouldn't need to see it. Yeah, okay. But what do you trust them to do? Because we've already had a discussion how the police are in effect protected and not having a duty of care against you. So what is it you expect to happen to the police? Do you expect them to be put in jail? Because that won't happen. This is a case of omission. This isn't a case of doing something. This isn't a case of going out and doing something premeditated. This is a case of omission. So the police aren't going to jail for this. Don't think that's ever going to happen. That's not how our society's set up. If you want to change that, then as a society, you need to think about changing it through Parliament. And that's never going to happen, is it? Because let's face it, we still have the same method of government that we had 200 years ago. So nothing's changing there. Our government still looks out for business before people. People aren't there. They aren't high up in the eyes of government. Government's looking to the country. They're looking to the economy. They're not looking to the people. The people don't count. And we pay the poor, unfortunate wretches, a pittance to keep them just enough happy, just enough that they don't rise up and throw us out if the TV goes off early or whatever. The people are just kept under control, and they really are. And I can't think of a country where they aren't. I really can't. If you can help me out, fine. I mean, even the most democratic of countries around something like Switzerland, which is a form of direct democracy, they're still very, very controlled. I mean, you can't wash your car on a Sunday. You can't move house at the weekend, you know. These are all rules in place in Switzerland. And you get big fines if you try and do these things. Can't cut your grass at the weekend, that kind of stuff, you know. But they are able to vote on the big questions every year because they get referenda on all the big questions. And the whole country can vote on it. So they're probably more democratic than we are. We elect people to represent us who never represent us because they represent the interests of corporations, of businesses, of people who can shout loudly and make influence. You know, people like Donald Trump, like Bill Gates, they represent people who can splash the cash. And splashing that cash, some of it might fall back down to the people, but most of it doesn't. Most of it doesn't. That is money, 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 Shanti. It really is. What else have we got? I asked the Alaskan Groucho why he thought, when I suggested that it should be investigated by other forces, he said the other forces are equally corrupt and the authorities have been encouraging what caused us and are involved in the cover-up. That's a valuable insight from someone who lives in Alaska and Utah. I don't understand. I don't understand why he just makes these statements without any kind of evidence. What cover up? What's been covered up? I don't think anything about Henry Novak's been covered up. In fact, I think it's been quite transparent, much to the chagrin of the police, no doubt. But hey, you know, shit happens. Deal with it. And that's directed at the police. You know, deal with your shit. What else we got? It needs to be out there. If it wasn't, Mr. Nowak wouldn't have made this statement in front of the television cameras. Well, why wouldn't he have? Why wouldn't he have made that statement? He never mentioned releasing the body cam footage. And I really don't think it would help anyone. I think it might just inflame the country. Some might say that's what we need. But it's not probably anything that you want to do. Yeah. Someone says, you mean sweep it under the carpet again? Yeah, well, sweep what under the carpet? We've already discussed how the police are effectively immune from prosecution in cases like this. You know, Starmer made a statement, didn't he? What did Mr. Starmer say? Let's have a look. I don't want to listen to space. Is that not one of the most useless things ever? Spaces on Twitter. What a joke. But Starmer made a statement, didn't he? Yeah. This is an awful, shocking case. Henry's loved ones have gone through the trauma of a long trial and endured Henry's killer, making up appalling claims about their son, who was thoughtful, kind, and deeply loved. It's right that the IOPC is investigating the police's response to his senseless murder, and we must end the cycle of tragedy by tackling the horror of knife crime. Oh. This is like America, right? These are our guns. And it's not guns that kill people. It's not knives that kill people. And, you know, people look at America and go, well, if you took away the guns, then less people would die. Do you think so? Do you really think so? Because there are just as many guns per capita. In fact, there's more guns per capita in Canada than there is in America. There's more guns per capita in France than there is in America. And there's more guns in Switzerland. And Switzerland's one of the highest gun homicide rates. So why would America change its method? Why would America stop killing people if there were no guns? There's a problem in American culture that guns might just make it easier, but it doesn't take anything away. And the thing is, taking away people's guns doesn't stop you shooting people, because look what happened after Dunblane. You know, we took away handguns in the UK and gun crime went up. For 5 years, it went up. So gun crime had nothing to do with one guy going out and shooting a load of kids. And that might sound harsh, but effectively, you have taken the actions of one person and applied it to a whole society, and then realised, well, that wasn't the problem. It was the one guy that was the problem. And that's always going to be the case when it comes to knives. You know, tell people they can't carry knives. We've been telling people they can't carry knives in the streets for God knows how long. They're still running about with machetes, aren't they? So it's not the knives that are the problem, it's the people. And you've got to clamp down on the people. And the problem is, when you start clamping down on the people, the wrong colour ends up in jail. And then you look at the stats and you go, why are the jails like 55% Pakistani when they only make up 6% of the population? Oh, that's wrong. We're targeting the wrong people. No, we're not targeting the wrong people. The right people are getting put in jail. This is the problem. DEI just doesn't work. Doesn't work. It's a nonsense. You can't be frightened to apply the law, regardless of how bad it makes the stats look. And that's the fucking problem. This is where the police is losing its way, because it's taking direction from politicians and it's not applying the law. That's where the police have lost their way from the 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, it's got progressively worse as we've moved on. Oh. Well, I don't think we are being baited, Shalini. I don't think we're being baited by anyone. I think society determines the outcomes of all these things. We're doing it to ourselves. We always do. And then we turn around and we want to blame someone else for having done it to us. And that person's not there because they don't exist. Society makes itself. Society hurts itself. If you want to heal yourself, then society has to heal itself. That's the problem. Too many people don't care. You know, too many people go, not my problem. Just walk on by. So, basically Starmer said nothing. Yeah, he said nothing. So there we go. I know this isn't a very upbeat live stream, but it's quite a horrible subject. It does, Shanti. Of course it does. Society allows itself to be divided and guided. Yeah, because, I mean, what are the aims of government? And we bang on about this all the time. What are the actual aims of government? Keep your population under control and feather your own nest. Is there a government that doesn't do that? Is there? I mean, look at what's happening in the States right now with the oil market. Somebody's betting on the oil markets, and it's tying exactly into the decisions that Donald Trump is making. So somebody's insider trading in the government. So, you know, if there's a better example, I can't think of one. You know, feather your own nest. So there we go. So let's think about this. Is there anything we haven't covered? Is there anything about the sentencing that you're unsure about? So what we have to remember is he was found guilty. During the trial, the judge advised the jury that they could, if they wished, consider manslaughter, which is a lesser charge and has lower minimum terms. But, and one of the things I said on Friday was I thought he might get a reduction in term because I don't think he went premeditated. But that might be wrong, right? Because I've since found out he was carrying 2 kirpans. He had a small one round his neck, which fulfills his religious obligation. And let's remember, people that live in Denmark, France, Poland, none of the Sikhs there carry kirpans because they're banned. UAE, none of the Sikhs there carry kirpans because they're banned. And yet Sikhs still live there. So it's not that big a deal religious-wise, is it? It's really not. And maybe it's time that we, as a society that doesn't have a religious mandate that allows us to walk about with knives, maybe it's time we say, you know, let's go back to you can have a 3-inch blade and that's it, which is pretty much applies across the board to the rest of the country. So why not? Why not ban their kirpan? I don't care. I don't mean that in a nasty way. I just mean if you want to come and live in Britain, those might be the conditions. And obviously, it hasn't put people off living in Denmark or the Netherlands or wherever else, you know, because there are a lot of countries that ban them. So if you're banned from carrying it there, what's the difference? Why would you not? Why would you still live there? So anyway, he had this small kirpan, which filled his religious beliefs, and then he had this big one, which was a non-standard one, outside his clothing, which makes it pretty accessible and easy to use. Why? Maybe because he wanted easy access to a knife. And then they made up all these lies about what Henry had and hadn't done, which has all been proven in court. The police turned up after the assailant's family had turned up because he called his family first. And you notice that a lot in these groups. They call the family first because they need to have a confab about what they're going to do and get their story straight. So then the police arrive, and then probably an ambulance gets called. Now this guy's been stabbed multiple times. Once while trying to run away. So that to me, the stabbing, you know, the attack when he was running away isn't defensive at all. I mean, none of it's defensive, right? But you shoot someone in the back, you can't claim that you were defending yourself, right? So as a police officer, someone comes at you with a knife and you shoot them, that's good, right? The police officer, if someone comes at you with a knife, you pull your gun out, he drops a knife and runs away, you can't shoot him. Because you can't shoot him. Because he dropped his weapon and he's running away. So he's not a threat to you. He may be a threat to other people, but he doesn't have the weapon that he had. So what are you going to do? You're going to shoot him in the back? Not in this country. Not in this country. On the same token, though, if he turns around with a knife and tries to run away as a police officer, maybe you would shoot him in the back. And let's forget all this nonsense about shooting people in the legs and things like that. Cops don't do that. You're going to shoot someone, you shoot to stop. And that means hitting them in the centre of mass. Because you can't afford that bullet to miss and go somewhere else because, you know, a mile down the road might go through a kid. So that to me, the attack on him when he was trying to run away then gives us the level that it had gone beyond any kind of defence. However tenuous that might be, and I'm playing this as devil's advocate here, but At that point, I think murder is established. And obviously, the jury agrees with me because they found him guilty of murder. So remember, he has been found guilty of murder. The sentence for murder is life imprisonment. That sentence was handed down. The judge recommended that he serve no less than 21 years. Now, that's not a sentence that can be reduced. That doesn't get cut in half for good behaviour. That doesn't get, binned at 2/3. That's 21 years in the pokey. He's not getting out for 21 years. And when he finishes at 21 years, that doesn't mean he gets out. That means he's eligible for parole. The parole board deem him not a threat to society. He may get out at that point. His sentence never finishes. He still has a life sentence. He will be out on a life licence. He will always be monitored, checked on. And if he steps out of line, he can be taken back to prison like that. So this isn't justice hasn't been applied. Justice has been applied here. Some people may want more justice, but we don't do that anymore. We don't apply the final justice. We don't do that in this country. And there's debates to be had about that because what if you get the wrong guy? I mean, in this case, we're 100% certain, I would say, that we've got the right guy. But what if you get the wrong guy? And that's happened. That's happened in the past, and it's happened in this country. People have been hung and then found to have not been the right guy. So that's pretty bad. It's bad enough locking somebody up for life and then finding out you got the wrong guy. But imagine doing it when you've terminated their life. So after that, the police are now being investigated for their actions, and their actions are, without doubt, deplorable, disgusting, not what one would expect from a decent human being. Never mind a cop. Never mind what they are. One wouldn't expect those actions from a decent human being. They did not behave appropriately. They didn't assess the situation correctly. They didn't apply their knowledge, their expertise. They didn't apply anything to that situation that one would consider reasonable. Those cops, in my view, have failed miserably. But what won't happen is you won't see them in jail. You won't see them in jail because the police are protected from omission, from not doing things because of the way that the state and the police are structured. Not saying it's right, I'm just telling you how it is. So we now await the fight, finding out the case against the cops, and that'll drag on for months before anything comes out of that, I would imagine. People that are enraged, rightly so, with the actions of the police, yeah. But to what benefit would releasing the body cam footage be to anyone? Not least the family. The family may actually have seen the body cam footage privately. But what would that benefit the family if that was released publicly? Yeah, okay, it might turn people against the police in Southampton. It might turn people against the police anywhere. And, what do you want people to do? It's fine to be enraged. It's fine to be annoyed at something. But don't just knee-jerk and say, you must release the body cam footage. We must see it. Why must we see it? Because you know what's happened. So the question is, why do you feel the need to see it? Are you a voyeur? Because that's what I'm getting. That's the feel I'm getting from a lot of people on Twitter. They want to see it for themselves more than anything, you know? And they don't need to see it because they know exactly what happened. You've been told what's happened in court. The guy's been found guilty as well. The police have got to the point where some of them have resigned as a result of it. So they know what's happened as well. The police are being investigated. So we know what's happened. We know the police have fucked up royally of these individuals. And for senior officers to go on and try and defend their actions is just crazy. That's just crazy. You know, you're better saying nothing than trying to defend the actions of people that have not behaved appropriately. I mean, a guy stabbed somebody and you handcuff the victim? And apparently I don't know, but apparently the assailant, the murderer, because we can say that now, the murderer didn't even get handcuffed. Doesn't sound right. But to what benefit is us seeing? To what benefit is us seeing the footage? You know. But yeah, the senior police officers are disgusting in the way that they've the way we've dealt with that as well. Yeah, we kind of are living in clockwork orange times, Frankie. We kind of are, and I think it's going to get worse. I think we're going to get. Well, society always gets what it deserves, doesn't it? Because, you know, it doesn't matter what you say on Twitter or where you think your view is. Society as a whole gets what it deserves because everything comes from society. And we ultimately have the power. Who was it? Was it the Indonesian? No, who was it? Was it Myanmar? Yeah. They rose up and threw out the parliament, didn't they? They threw them all out. They just flung the Prime Minister out. So ultimately, the people have the power because the people have the mass. The people are the majority. And it's like, as Ben always goes on about, it's like a bug's life. You know, the grasshoppers don't want you to understand that ultimately you have the numbers to do what needs to be done. Right, I think that probably wraps it up for tonight. I've talked long enough, nearly an hour of nonsense. I just thought I'd give you some thoughts. And it's all very well. What triggered me was the people demanding to see the body cam footage, and I just don't know what they expect that to achieve. And go back and listen to it, Frankie. It's fairly concise. I don't ramble too much, I don't think. But yeah, I don't know what they hope to achieve. But yeah. A wee little bit of an impromptu stream. I hope you enjoyed it. It's been great.